Welcome to another edition of the Short Pause Gaming Podcast. This is episode number 164. And as you can see, we're running a two-man game tonight. Frankie Ayler took the night off so he could conduct his ninth playthrough of Uncharted 4. He loves the game that much. He is on playthrough number 9. And Bender Holt is out chasing married women and tearing families apart. So that leaves me with my good buddy, my good pal, and Destiny 2 Catalyst Hoarder, Ben Boyce. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, what's up, man? Just digging that knife in there.
Hey, I'm just trying to give you a proper welcoming.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff you said. I mean, just sounds like a typical Saturday night here at the Short Pause offices. So, just what we do here.
Yeah. So, Frankie couldn't make it tonight. Neither could Bender. But they'll be back very, very soon, hopefully. But anyways, let's jump into what you've been up to this week, man. How was your 4th of July? Good?
Yeah, 4th of July was fine. Just kind of hung out with the family, played some Destiny earlier in the day, and then kind of chilled out with the wife and kids, watched some fireworks in the neighborhood. Just kind of tried to just have a chill, relax, like holiday day. And then today it was just me and the kids all day. My wife's been gone, so me and the kids had a fun day. We went to see Ant-Man and the Wasp today.
Oh man, how was it?
It was awesome. Loved it. Really, really good movie. It's the perfect follow-up movie to Infinity War. Mm-hmm. It's a completely different tone, completely different kind of movie. I really loved Ant-Man and the Wasp. Thought it was awesome. The kids had a great time with it too. So it's a really, really fun flick. I definitely recommend checking that one out if you are a fan of superhero movies. We hit up the comic book store after, so grabbed a few books, and just it was an all around just fun superhero day for us. We built some Legos. And then just got some pizza. Just been a good day overall with just hanging with the kids. So it's been a good weekend, man. I'm ready to get down to business, talk some games now though.
Yeah, I dig that. And my day was pretty lame. I was at work. So,
yeah, that is pretty lame.
Yeah, it wasn't nearly as exciting as your day. I did eat some shawarma for the first time though.
First time?
First time ever having shawarma because it's not something.
I love shawarma, man.
It's not something they typically ever serve in Saginaw, but we opened up a new marketplace in downtown Saginaw that's literally like one block from where I work. So now I can just sit there and walk over to the other side, like right down the street, and go there. And they have this diverse lineup of foods. I mean, Cajun food. They got a Saigon sandwich shop. They've got an Egyptian place. They've got this falafel or falafela. I don't even know if that's what it's called, but that's where
falafel.
Yeah, and that's where I got my shawarma, and that was actually really, really good. So I've been going over there throughout the week, and it's so awesome to have a place like that with such a diverse menu with a lot of different items to pick up. Really, really good food. So if you're ever in Saginaw and you're in downtown Saginaw, make sure you stop by the SVRC Marketplace. It is absolutely fantastic. Frankie, what's up, buddy? Frankie's in the chat. He couldn't make it here, but at least he stops by to say hello. Bendy had computer issues, and we're not even sure when or if he'll be back. So we're hoping Bender is able to get those issues resolved. Jacob, what's going on? But other than that, boys, not a whole lot going on my end. But let's jump into what we got going on this week, man. We've got a bunch of new releases. We've got obviously the Spotlight Tales, but we got some other things to talk about as well.
Yeah, as far as the Spotlight titles go, I think first we want to start things off with what we're looking at in terms of games with gold.
Yes.
So let's hop into that. Now this is a bit of a subtle month for Xbox. There's not any big like AAA titles in there, at least for the Xbox One. But I believe this is a very strong month. So first and foremost, we have Assault Android Cactus. That'll be available July 1st to the 31st on the Xbox One. Death Squared, available July 16th through August 15th. On the Xbox 360 side of things, Virtua Fighter, Final Showdown. Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown, July 1st to the 15th will be available via backwards compatibility or just for the plain old Xbox 360. And then also Splinter Cell Conviction, a Splinter Cell game that a lot of people really liked. Available July 16th through the 31st on the 360, and of course it'll be backwards compatible with the Xbox One. So, Virtua Fighter 5 is a fine fighting game. Brent, Splinter Cell, like I said, is Conviction. Is a game that a lot of people liked. The interface in that game is very slick. Assault Android Cactus is one I haven't played, but I always thought it looked awesome. I've heard some good things about it. Death Squared heard some really good things about as a multiplayer puzzle game experience. So I think overall, while there's no big like AAA title in here, I think this is a strong quartet of games for Games of Gold this month.
Yeah, I agree. I think Death Squared looks really, really good. That's a game I could totally get into. The Cactus game looks really sweet too. And then obviously Splinter Cell Conviction. I actually never played that, so I'll be looking forward to downloading that and giving that a try for the first time.
Yeah, I just I didn't play a ton of that game, but I just remember the interface on it, just the way the like the words were in the environment. It was really slick the way the presentation was in that game. I remember the first time they showed it at E3 or whatever it was at the Microsoft presser. Just thought it was a really cool looking title. So I'm curious to see how that one holds the test of time. So I think we're in an agreement here that's a strong month overall. And then PlayStation Plus also a strong month as well. So on the PS4 side of things, we'll get Heavy Rain and Absolver, which is an online melee action fighting game that I hadn't played prior, and I always thought about picking up, never got around to it. So I was excited to see that one in the lineup this month. Heard some good things about that one. I definitely want to get in there and give that one a whirl. And I mean, what more can we say about Heavy Rain at this point, Brandon? I mean, it's a legendary, Quantic Dream game at this point. It really pushed the boundaries in terms of narrative adventure games at the time when it came out, and I'd imagine that one still holds the test of time pretty well. So in addition to that, on the PS3, we're getting Rayman 3 HD, which is Rayman always a good game. Extreme Exorcism PS3 is also cross-buy with the PS4, so that will be available on there as well. Space Overlords on the PS Vita, and then a very very great title to get in the PS Plus line for the Vita here, Zero Escape, Zero Time Dilemma. So awesome to see that's the final part of this trilogy, right? To be available for the Vita now, as this one comes after Virtue's Last Reward. So this is kind of the wrap up to that. So that's a really cool game to get in here as well. Brent, your overall thoughts on what we see from PS Plus though?
A nice, diverse lineup of games. Some really good choices there. Heavy Rain was an awesome game. I really enjoyed my time with that. I've always been interested in Absolver. I love it when a Plus game is a game that I don't own, so I actually benefit from it this month. So I'll be really interested in checking out Plus. All the other titles are very, very cool. Rayman and then Zero Time Dilemma. That's something that I own it. I haven't even gotten to that one yet, but those are games that I've always found very, very appealing.
Yeah, my son downloaded Absolver, created a character, and was watching him play it a little bit. And that looks like a neat game. So really? I do want to get in there and give that one a whirl. It's definitely a nuanced game. There's some depth to the fighting system, and it's interesting how you meet up with other people online there and battle them or whatever. But yeah, I want to know some more about how that game actually works, and get in there and kind of give it a whirl myself. But yeah, definitely a very very interesting title there in Absolver. So glad I held off on buying it now because it showed up on PlayStation Plus. I was tempted a few times, a few sales here and there. I was like, yeah, should I pull the trigger or not? But yeah, glad to see it showing up there. So Brent, those are your Games of Gold PS Plus for July. Several of those games available right now for Games of Gold. All of the PlayStation Plus games, I believe, are available right now. So you can go on, download those, pick those up if you so choose. So with that, Brent, let's move into our spotlight titles for the week. Honestly, man, there's actually a lot of really cool looking titles that were coming out this week. I didn't know exactly what was on the docket for Tuesday or for next week in general, but looking through the list, perusing through what's going to be available next week, there's actually quite a few good looking titles, especially on the independent side of things. And it was tough to kind of narrow down what I wanted to spotlight this week. But when the dust settled, I chose these few games. So first and foremost, Octopath Traveler, definitely want to mention that. So I'm a longtime fan of Square's old RPG games, so like the stuff we saw on the Super Nintendo, or the PlayStation 1 even, and Octopath Traveler definitely exudes that kind of a vibe. It harkens back to that day of RPG. It's a very interesting looking title. It takes 8 different stories and kind of weaves this game around them. What I'm interested in is to see how this game works, how it's structured. I've read a little bit about it right now, and it seems like at least initially, All 8 of the stories seem to be pretty separate. There doesn't seem to be any crossover. So I'm curious to see how the game progresses and if at some point they cross paths or how all that kind of works out. Interested to see more about that. The game reminds me of Saga Frontier in that respect, which is an old Square Enix RPG series where you would have several different characters, several different stories that you could go through. It harkens back to that kind of a game. But these stories look very interesting. The characters look very interesting, and I haven't personally tried out the demo. Didn't pick it up to give it a whirl. But I know the Bender spent some time with it. I know he really liked what he saw from Octopath Traveler. I know that's one he's really looking forward to. I know Frankie's looking forward to that one as well. So I'm definitely curious to see how this one is going to turn out. What about you, Brent? Any interest? Did you play the demo for Octopath at all?
I played the first demo, and I really liked it. I actually have the new demo because the new demo, your save carries over to the final release of the game. And I haven't started it yet because I didn't want to just jump into it and have it sit there for like a couple of weeks. So I'm actually going to start it this week, and that way when the game launches on Friday, I'll be ready to go.
Gotcha. So Frankie mentioning he would have picked Vermintide. This Vermintide 2 to spotlight this week. So interesting title there as well. Yeah, so I'm curious to see more about Octopath. It does sound a little bit strange in the way the game is set up. I read a Kotaku article a few days ago. They were kind of talking about their early impressions of the game, and the impressions were positive overall for the most part. They praised the battle system, and some of the stories were really interesting. The way the game is structured, from what I understand, is you complete somebody's first chapter, and then in order to get to their second chapter, there's quite a large gap between your level and the level that's required to get to the next chapter.
Oh, really?
So let's say you grab your first character, you go through their chapter 1, you end that chapter at level 5. Next chapter 2 is like recommended level is like level 20. So then what you can do is you can go into your other character to start their stories and go through their chapter 1s, and you kind of slowly, methodically level up your characters that way. And then eventually you'll hit level 20 and you can start doing your chapter 2s for your other characters or whatnot. But, if it's a character that you're really into and you want to go through their story, like it sounds like you're going to have to wait in order to unlock the levels that are required to get through those chapters. And like I said, I don't know if their stories cross paths at all. So if they do at some point, then that's cool. That would make a lot more sense why the system was structured the way that it is. If their stories never cross paths, this is a little bit of a strange way to set up the game in that respect. But yeah, I'll reserve judgment for when I actually get to play the game myself. But early impressions sound pretty good on it. Interesting structure. I do want to see how that all works out personally. That's a Friday release, so keep that in mind if you are looking for that on your Switch. The other game I'm going to spotlight this week, Brent, and like I said, there's a lot of really good independent titles this week on the docket, but the one I chose, the one I had to go with, had no choice, was 20XX. So this is a game clearly inspired by Mega Man. Clearly. I mean, it looks like a Mega Man game. I love the art style, love the colorful graphics, love the fast-paced, high-octane action. This is one I definitely want to get my hands on and give a whirl. If it's anything like Mega Man or Mega Man X, this will be something that I really dig and I really enjoy. The other cool thing, this one has co-op. So it sounds like it's got online co-op.
It does have online co-op, yes.
So you can actually jump in there and to play a Mega Man style game cooperatively. Sounds pretty cool in my book, man. Have you checked this one out at all? Any thoughts on it?
I think it looks like a beautiful looking game, and when I remember watching the trailer, I was like, okay, I know this is going to be an indie spotlight candidate. And then when I seen co-op, I was like, wait a minute, did that say online or did it just say couch co-op? But it said both local and online. So that's something I think you and I could revisit at some point, because I know you're not going to be actually doing the indie spotlight this week. You're not going to be around, but it's something that, and I'll be happy to take over for that because I got a game that I want to show off. I'm really excited about, and I'll talk about it in a second. But I do think that's something that we could revisit later on, maybe this week or next week, and do a co-op session of it.
Yeah, I would love that. I'm definitely a little disappointed I can't feature this game on the Tuesday Night Indie Spotlight. Was looking forward to playing this one, but I will be out of town Tuesday through Thursday this week, so I will be unavailable for that. But you, Brent, will be stepping in to do the Indie Spotlight. You'll be featuring the first title on your Spotlight list, which is what, sir?
I will be featuring The Spectrum Retreat. This comes from a one-man development studio, Dan Smith Studios, and obviously the developer's name is Dan Smith. And the interesting thing about
you don't say.
The interesting thing about Dan is he actually won a BAFTA award for Spectrum, which was a prototype for this game. So a one-man developer created this prototype called Spectrum, wins a BAFTA for it, and now it's a full-on game, which is pretty sweet. But this is a challenging first-person puzzle game set in the near future. You awake at this Penrose Hotel, which almost looks like kind of like a more modernized Overlook Hotel from The Shining. Only this one is it's not as it seems, and your desire to unearth the truth is obstructed by an array of color-coded puzzles, mind-bending physics challenges, and the growing fear of exposing your true intentions. So not too sure what this game is going to be out in terms of its story, but I love the fact, it's kind of got this strange vibe going on, and the trailer is very, very cool with the audio. You just got this guy that's constantly good morning and welcome to the Penrose Hotel, and it's like Groundhog Day. You just keep waking up in the same place, and you're trying to figure out why you're there. So I love any kind of games like a puzzle. I kind of got vibes of like Cube, another game that I like that's a very cool puzzle game that's based around physics and trying to figure out, color coordination and stuff. So I'm really, really excited for the Spectrum release. Bender says that's a Bender game. I have to agree. That definitely looks like a Bender game. And then the other game that I think it looks interesting this week, we saw some gameplay earlier, and it does, it looks a little rough, but the concept is there. I like the idea of the game, and it's co-op. But the other game I'm looking at is Earthfall from developer Hollow Spark, and the description for this game is pretty simple. Emerging from the devastation of a global meteor strike, aliens swarm the landscape and ravage the planet. Everyday people must stand together and fight back with a wide variety of weapons, supplies, and defenses as they battle through the towns and wilderness of the Pacific Northwest. This game features 4-player co-op. You'll be using advanced 3D printers to print more than 20 different weapons to use against these vicious alien enemies. And then you kind of have like some tower defense in here. You got to strategically deploy barricades to block the enemy hordes and install turrets anywhere to create perfect alien killing zones. The developer has said this game was inspired by games like Left 4 Dead and Payday, 2 games that are very popular. And like I said, this is going to be a cooperative experience. I love co-op games. Now whether or not the gameplay trailer that we saw earlier or the gameplay video that we saw is going to be indicative of the quality of the game and how it plays remains to be seen. But I love anything that's co-op, man. That's always a big sell for me. There's 20 different weapons. I like the this tower defense element to it. So I'm definitely interested in Earthfall, man. Where are you at on Earthfall?
Definitely interested in it, but yeah, like you, man, I watched a gameplay segment from it and just was not impressed. I mean, the thing looked extremely generic. The aliens looked generic. The whole just setup looked really generic, and I just wasn't impressed by what I saw. Now that could very well change. Once we get in there, we have a group in there, and we see how the mechanics play and how the game feels. Like that definitely could change. I'm still interested to experience this game. But my initial thoughts just on watching is like, man, this thing looks super generic. I don't know if this is going to hold my attention.
Well, hopefully it's a lot better than what we initially saw. Like I said, it's all going to come down to how it plays. I mean, it doesn't have to be a beautiful looking game to be fun. I mean, look at Rainbow Six Siege, not a great looking game, but once you get in there and play it and you see the depth of it, maybe it's a lot better experience after you play the game. So definitely something I'm definitely looking into. But yes, Tuesday night at 10 o'clock, I'll be taking over the Tuesday Night Indie Spotlight, and we will be doing the Spectrum Retreat.
Dude, I'm really looking forward to seeing that one, man. I'm glad you're featuring that one because I'm super interested in that title. I think it looks rad as hell. So I will definitely be, at the very least, watching the repeat of the stream at some point. But yeah, I'm very curious about that one.
Yeah, should be a good time. So make sure you tune into that if you're interested in it. Subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, and also follow us on Twitter at The Short Pause. We'll always send out a link when the Tuesday Night Indie Spotlight is live. All right, boys, let's hop into the news, and we've got some stuff to talk about. Not a terribly busy week in terms of news, but we got some good stuff in here to talk about. And the first thing we're going to discuss is whether or not Google is planning to take on Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, dude, with a device of their own.
You don't say, Brent.
Yes, codenamed Yeti. This is Google's possible attempt to jump into the video game console market. And this comes from a report from Kotaku. They have sources that fed them a lot of this information. We pulled some of the items from this report to kind of discuss a little bit and see if this is something that we'd be interested in. But Google's video game plans consist of a 3-pronged approach. 1, some sort of streaming platform. Already, I'm concerned. There's going to be some sort of hardware, obviously, and this one is key. An attempt to bring game developers under the Google umbrella, whether through aggressive recruiting or even major acquisitions. That's the word from 5 people who have been either briefed on Google's plans or heard about them secondhand. At the Game Developers Conference in March of this year, Google representatives met with several big video game companies to gauge interest in its streaming platform, which sources said. Google also took meetings at E3 in Los Angeles a few weeks ago, those sources said. And from what Kotaku heard, the company is looking not to just woo game developers to the Yeti service, but to buy development studios entirely. Now, in regards to the Yeti, like NVIDIA's GeForce Now, the Google service would offload the work of rendering graphics to beefy computers elsewhere, allowing even the cheapest PCs to play high-end games. The biggest advantage of streaming, as opposed to physical discs or downloads, is that it removes hardware barriers for games. Games like Call of Duty can reach a significantly bigger audience if players don't need an expensive graphics card or console to play them. But as Frankie said, Frankie said in the chat, that worked out well for Amazon. Exactly. Amazon has spent the past 4 years making big investments into gaming, spending many millions of dollars to woo top developers, build its own game engine, and buy companies like Twitch and Double Helix. Even with 3 full-fledged studios in operation, Amazon has yet to ship a single major game. It also canceled their multiplayer sports brawler Breakaway last year. So obviously, when you take some of these tech companies who are trying to get into who aren't as experienced as like the Sonys, Microsofts, and Nintendos, it's always kind of wishy-washy, and some things never ever come to fruition. And then lastly, the other thing that stood out here is Google wants to make a splash. In January 2018, the company hired Phil Harrison, the veteran video game executive who spent long stints at Sony and Microsoft as a top manager of the PlayStation and Xbox. Google has also been on a massive hiring spree, bringing in experienced video game developers and marketers from EA, PlayStation, and many other top companies. Now, this is a deep article. There's a lot to dissect from it, but these are some of the things that I pulled out that I thought were really interesting, boys. But I want to discuss it with you, man. Here we are. Google wants to get into the fray. They want to get into the mix, but their idea is to do a streaming service. And, we've talked about it before. The issue with streaming is always going to be internet bandwidth. Can we get a consistent internet bandwidth to maintain a sharp 4K image with HDR? And I understand that's, we can get that with movies, but movies are watching movies. You're not actually playing a game. There's not lag or any of that jazz. There's a lot that goes into streaming a video game, man. And I want to get your thoughts on Google's plans here and what they're trying to do.
It's like we talked about on the podcast a few weeks ago, man. Coming out of E3, we talked about how people in the industry want to move towards this streaming future where we can stream all of our games. We don't necessarily have to have a certain type of box or this or that. But just like we talked about there, my feelings stay the same today, Brent. Just a few weeks later, it's that I just don't think we're ready for this, man. It's like I understand that the industry believes that streaming is the future of this entertainment medium, but I just think we're a little bit got the cart a little bit before the horse here. I just don't know if we're ready to have a fully streaming platform as the basis for our video game entertainment at this point. Like you mentioned, the infrastructure, at least in the United States right now, is not where it needs to be for something like this to make sense. Now, maybe things are different with Google, where you have like Google Fiber and you have the amount of money that is involved in a company like this. So maybe they're able to do something different. I mean, their vision here is, like they say, imagine playing The Witcher 3 within a tab on Google Chrome. I mean, that's a lofty goal. And I have a hard time envisioning something like that working in this day and time right now. But maybe they have other plans. Maybe they have some type of a roadmap for the next 5 years or for the future of this. Clearly, this is something they're going all in on. I mean, Kotaku sourced 5 different people for this.
Yep.
People have been talking about this for months. People have been talking about this at E3 at the Game Developers Conference. This is obviously well known in the development circles. So clearly, this is something that they're trying to get off the ground. But yeah, Brent, I just don't see how we have the infrastructure to pull this off right now. I have yet to see a streaming platform work with zero lag or minimal lag or negligible lag.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we need to experience video games, especially the games that are really popular today, like the Twitch shooters or games in the fighting game community. Like you have to have zero input lag or negligible input lag in order for these games to function properly. You
Mm-hmm.
can't play a Twitch shooter with lag. It doesn't work. You can't
Mm-mm.
play Street Fighter with even an iota of lag. It just doesn't work. So until they've figured out a way to make this function, until Google's like, hey, Google Fiber is available everywhere in the U.S.
Right.
or all the major metropolitan areas in the U.S. Until they can say that, I don't see how this is a viable form of playing games. Especially
Mm-hmm.
like you said, as we get up and we're getting into the 4K, and now presumably next generation we'll see 4K as just like the normal run of the mill like resolution for these games. We'll see 4K 30, 4K 60, whatever the case may be in this next generation of games. Like, what kind of connection do you have to stream that properly, regardless of what supercomputers are running these games in the background? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what type of internet connection do you have to play these games properly, especially as we're getting ready to move into the next generation of gaming, and these things just get more and more powerful and demand more and more of the computers that they're running on, and demand more and more of the internet and the bandwidth that we're going to need to in order to stream these things. Like, I don't see it right now, man. I don't see it anytime soon. Like I said, unless I'm just ignorant of what's going on in technologically within the United States, I just don't see how this is a viable thing right now.
Yeah, no, and you're not off to. I mean, like Google Fiber is available in a very small fraction part
I
of the
mean,
country.
extremely. I mean, what is it? Like
Extremely.
less than 1% or
It's a very
something crazy like
small
that?
sample size. There's not a lot of people that have it, and that's the
Yeah.
type of internet you're going to need to get the most out of a streaming service. I've got pretty decent internet. I've had it for a long time. Over 100 down or 200 down. For the last couple of years, and every time I've used PlayStation Now, it's not the optimal experience. It
Yeah.
really isn't. I mean, that's just an example. That's just PlayStation Now. It could vary, for when it comes to Google. But the
Yeah.
fact is, I want to sit there. I want to play a game natively on the hardware in my house. I don't want to
Hmm.
have to rely on the internet. If the internet goes down, I can't play anything. I don't want that. It's
Yeah.
just. Look. I get it. I understand the appeal. I really do. I understand it. But I just don't think streaming. I think we're a ways off, and I don't think just a couple years. I think we're a long ways
I
off before
I
we
agree with you.
have a proper streaming service that functions at 100%, that works perfectly. Because if people are shelling out for games, or if they're
Mm.
shelling out for systems, this thing has to work at all times.
I mean, we could be what, 5, maybe even 10 years away from
Always,
something
dude.
like that being even a realistic possibility.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how you look at this if you're an investor or somebody that's involved in this process. You don't look at this and be like, I just there's just no way that this works right now.
Yeah.
On the type of scale, with the type of money you would spend
Mm-hmm.
with their plan that they've laid out here, I just don't see how it would be worth it just to offer this to the elite minority who could take advantage of what this service is going to offer.
Mm-hmm.
I just the other part of this though, Brent, is this is Google. Once upon a time, I was like, man, there's no way you can step into the ring with Sega and Nintendo. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why would you even attempt it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we see like Panasonic jump in, and we see some of these other companies come along. But lo and behold, PlayStation came along. They stepped their foot into the water. They made a huge splash, and they became one of the pillars of video gaming.
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward a few more years, man, there's no way anybody's gonna tangle with Nintendo and Sega and Sony. Here comes Microsoft. They swoop in with the Xbox, a whole bunch of money behind them at Microsoft, step their foot into the video game waters, and they're now a staple in the video game industry. In so much that Sega is now a software developer.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm thinking the same thing right now to myself. I'm like, how do you get in the ring with Sony and with Microsoft and with Nintendo? Like, how is there room for a fourth pillar in that? But I've said this before and was wrong. And when you have a company like Google with the money that they have, and I think the key here too, Brent, you mentioned them being aggressive and making a splash, an attempt to bring game developers under the Google umbrella, whether through aggressive recruiting or even major acquisitions. So I offered this to you when we were initially talking about this. So what if Google goes out and they make a play for Epic, and they buy Epic, and they tell everybody, hey, the only place you're going to get to play Fortnite 2 is right here on the Google Yeti. This is the only place. Epic is an in-house developer for us now. And if you want to experience Fortnite in the future, you come under the Yeti umbrella and you experience Fortnite. Like if they make that kind of an aggressive move, then I mean we have no choice but to open up our eyes and take Google seriously with what they're trying to do here with the Yeti, whether or not they have the technology to do it or not. But just like when you have a company like Google with the money that they have, I feel like that's the kind of move like that they're gonna have to make in order to make a splash in the video game space right now.
And see, even that though, I mean, yeah, Google will come to Epic with a ton of money, but even Epic will have to stop and think, look, man, if we do this, I mean, what happens if they buy us and we get all this money and that's great, and then we make Fortnite 2, and Fortnite 2 isn't going to speed up Google Fiber. It's not going to speed up the expansion of Google Fiber or any of these other faster internets. So I mean, they're still going to be fighting up that uphill battle. And then what happens? People are like, oh my god, well I still got to play Fortnite 2. I'm going to try it with just my regular DSL that I have or my regular high-speed internet, and it's not the optimal experience, and it sucks, and people get pissed about that. And then all of a sudden, Google Yeti is dead on arrival, and so is Epic because they're a part of that sinking ship. So, I mean, there's a lot that has to go into consideration here. I mean, yeah, they'll get paid a boatload of money, but that's not going to speed up the expansion of Google Fiber. Okay?
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I'm interested to see what Google can do. I mean, look, it's 2018. They could roll something out in a year, and it might just blow our minds how awesome it is. I mean, you look at what Mixer's done with their streaming. I mean, it's almost instantaneous now. You can stream from your PC right to Mixer, and there's no delay. So obviously there are advancements being made in how people deal with internet and how they optimize bandwidth. And there's no saying that Google can't do something the same with streaming their games. So, a lot of things could happen, but it's just I'm not totally sold on it. I mean, streaming gameplay to a YouTuber Mixer is different than trying to play a game over the internet that is not, always 100% reliable.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just look at when we do something like SharePlay, for instance. There's just a tiny hint of input lag, at least between the person that's sharing in the game. The person that's playing the game natively plays the game fine. They don't experience any of that. But the person that's sharing the game, it's playable, and I've done it with you on multiple occasions. We've played through games, and after a few minutes, you kind of get used to it. You get used to that. I mean, it's like less than a second, less than a half a second. It's just this, but it's just something that makes you slightly off when you're playing the game, and that's video game streaming as we sit today and right now. Like that's what happens. You get that just little tinge of lag, and it just affects the entire experience. And like you mentioned, like we talked about before, man, that's why it's okay for like movies and stuff. If a movie buffs for a second or two and gets caught up and the picture pixelates for a minute and then gets back to where it needs to be, like that's okay. You're watching a movie, you can deal with that. When you're playing a game, like you can't. That can't happen.
That split second you're talking about, that split second you're talking about affects everything in a fighting game, in a shooter. If you're playing Dark Souls, you can't have a split second off with your dodge or with your attack. Sports games in general, baseball, trying to gauge a pitch, you can't have that input lag. You can't have any of that. It makes for a terrible experience. So
anything you're playing online, just completely affects that. And while I don't, it's hard for me to envision like the streaming working right now or whenever Google's planning to roll this out. But I guess my point is with this is if they were to make a splash and they do hire somebody like Epic, that at least like gets everybody's attention. Oh, yeah. At least everybody's like, Google is serious about this, so we're gonna at least give them a chance with this and see what they have to offer. But yeah, I think when it gets down to brass tacks, though, when you look at this, you have to look at this and think that this is phase 2 of a broader plan. Phase 1 is getting Google Fiber into more people's houses and having them be able to take advantage of that to go along with the Google Yeti. I just don't see how they can roll this out without having phase 1 completed first. That, to me, this seems like a part of a larger plan. But if everybody's talking about it right now, it seems like maybe it's more imminent than at least I think it is.
Well, you know who thinks it's pretty imminent is Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot. And listen to
Yves is continuously talking about streaming,
and
all
Yves is aiming big. He believes streaming may open the door to 5 billion players in a decade.
Wow.
He's going all in on streaming, dude.
Clearly.
In a YouTube video Q&A, Guillemot responds to a question about console cycles and noted his belief that the advancements of streaming could add billions of players to the industry over the coming years. Here's what Yves had to say. What we are dreaming is that technology will dreaming is a key word, is that technology will allow us to actually stream our games to all the TVs, mobile phones, and tablets in the future, and that we'll be able to give an opportunity to all our brands to reach 2.5 billion in 5 years and maybe 5 billion players within 10 years. In 5 years, he thinks he's going to have 2.5 billion people streaming games. I think the next big thing is going to be the capacity to stream our games to more screens and the ability to use all of the farms of servers that will be in data centers so that we can create the ultimate game, which is a game that will be very responsive to all the actions you do in it, remembering what you have done and anticipating your needs. Again, it sounds like Yves is all in, dude. Ubisoft is all in on this streaming stuff.
So he says the ability to use all the farms of servers that will be in data centers so that we can create the ultimate game, which is a game that will be very responsive to all the actions you do in it, remembering what you have done and anticipating your needs. What is he getting at with that? He doesn't seem he's not factoring in the internet connection in this equation. Does Yves know something about this that we don't, or on how this is going to work?
Clearly, he's got an idea. I mean, he has a vision how he anticipates this sort of thing will play out. And obviously, these CEOs, they get a lot of insider information about what's going on, the advancements of technology. Mm-hmm. So obviously, there's something, an end game. He's looking at a roadmap, and there's an end game that says, "Hey, look, this will all work." And so he's obviously got something that, or somebody telling him what preparations are being made, and that's why he's kind of alluding to this is where we're possibly headed. But dude, I don't know, man. No way.
Going off that, Yves thinks that this is a reality in 5 years. He's talking about streaming to TVs, mobile phones, tablets in 5 years. He's talking about 2.5 billion people having access to Ubisoft's games in 5 years via the way that they're able to stream these games. So by that logic, that's going to fit in with the Google Yeti. Like, that's going to be out in a few years and be able to tap into this future that Yves sees, where in 5 years we're going to be able to stream something like Assassin's Creed Odyssey to a tablet or a TV or whatever device we have in front of us and be able to play that game. And according to him, in what appears to be a lag-free setting. I don't see this, man. I don't see where this is coming from. I don't know how these advancements are going to be made in the next 5 years. Look, I get technology advances rapidly and these things move quickly, but in no way, shape, or form have I seen what's in front of me right now indicate that in 5 years we're going to be at the point where I can stream Assassin's Creed Odyssey on my phone, where I can stream Assassin's Creed Odyssey on my TV, and I can just play it lag-free. Mm-hmm. I don't see it, man. Mm-hmm. So I don't know something. Yves is the CEO of a huge company, a huge tech company. He obviously knows a lot more about this stuff than we do. But Yves, I just don't see it, dude. Mm-hmm. I don't see how this is gonna work. Not in 5 years.
Yeah, we're not privy to that information. Like I said, maybe there's more to it than we know. I mean, that's always a distinct possibility. That's probably actually the case here. But I'm gonna have to hear about the stuff that he knows about before I can get excited about the stuff that he's talking about. So
I mean, when you think more about this, Brent, if Yves is talking about this in 5 years, Phil Spencer's on stage talking about streaming when he brings up the next Xbox. Google is talking about hopping into the space and streaming, seemingly in the near future here. Is this closer than we think it is, man? Like, is the technology going to be there, and there's something that's going to happen that we're just not aware of? Are we going to be able to do this over a regular internet connection? Something's not adding up here. I want to know more about this, because clearly everybody that's running these big companies that are involved in this, they think that this is a reality sooner, much sooner, rather than later.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to wait and see, dude. I'm not really sure what to make of it, but things are brewing, and maybe Google's at the forehead or at the front of it, and they're spearheading it. But we'll have to sit back and find out. We want to get your thoughts, viewers. If you're watching this live or if you're watching it on demand, I want to get your thoughts. Are you ready for streaming your video games at all times as opposed to playing it natively on a console? Are you ready deal with lag? Are you ready to deal with input lag or possible pixelation and not a totally clear picture because your internet's not up to snuff? I want to get your thoughts on. Make sure
Bandwidth caps. How much is your internet going to cost to do this?
Yeah. There's a lot to take into consideration, so make sure you share your thoughts in the comments. We want to get your thoughts on all this jazz. So, really good stuff there. All right, moving on, boys. Since E3, we've heard a lot about next gen consoles. Next gen, lots of stuff. Microsoft talking about Xbox Scarlet. You've got Bethesda talking about Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 being on next gen.
Not one but two games.
Yeah.
They're already talking about.
We've heard all this stuff about next gen stuff, but now we're hearing another one, and this one comes from an Infinity Ward job listing for a next gen Call of Duty. This job listing was first reported by Charlie Intel, and it references a, quote, new, exciting, unannounced title for multiple next-gen platforms. The listing also mentions, quote, a broad understanding of both multiplayer and single-player game design. So, Infinity Ward, they're the next in line to develop a Call of Duty game. We've already heard, we've already seen from, we know up next is Treyarch, and previously was, who was it?
Sledgehammer.
So up next is Infinity Ward. And now if Infinity Ward is developing for multiple next-gen platforms, and the next Call of Duty game is coming out in 2019, now here's where the confusion sets in. Because if they're working on the next Call of Duty game that's going to be next-gen, and their game is due out next year, why would they be making a next gen? And then, if everyone thinks 2020 is when these systems are coming out, why would they be working on the 2020 Call of Duty? Wouldn't that be Sledgehammer working on a next gen system? Because that's typically how this thing works. So I want to get your thoughts on this, man. Infinity Ward is working on a new exciting title for multiple next gen platforms. Does this mean? Could this mean that we'll see these new systems? Because if they're porting it over to next gen before the next Call of Duty in 2020, does that mean these new systems are going to be start coming out in the spring of 2020 as opposed to the fall?
I don't know, man. This is quite the interesting development here. So I think there's three scenarios here, and some of them are more likely than others. So first scenario is, like you mentioned, this is a game that maybe it's cross-generational. So it releases in 2019 for the PS4 and for the Xbox One, and then maybe we're all thinking fall for the release of the PS5 and the Xbox 2, but Sony and Microsoft are thinking spring. And in March or around the time that the Switch launched, the PS5 and the Xbox 2 release at that time. At that point, Infinity Ward's ready to port the game, or they have it ready for launch day to have their new Call of Duty game on the new platforms at launch. So that's possibility number one. Possibility number two is that we're all thinking these systems are launching in 2020. These things are launching in 2019. And Call of Duty is going to be there on launch day. Once again, cross-generational. It'll be on the PS4 and the Xbox One, but it'll also be sitting right there for the Xbox 2 and the PS5 in the fall of 2019. I guess that's a possibility. You know, there hasn't been any one way or another that's been like next gen is 2020. This is all just kind of what we're thinking at this point, but we've thought wrong before. So the other possibility, this is probably the furthest one, is that maybe they're getting their team together for their next Call of Duty after the one that they're actively working on right now.
Oh wow!
So I don't know how job postings work for Infinity Ward. I don't know if they have a small team dedicated to working on what their next project is going to be, and they know they're going to be on a next gen platform at some point. You know, with the next title that they make after the one that they currently have slated for current gen. So maybe they have a small team dedicated to a next gen platform, and they're bringing in people to add to that team to work on that game in the future. No, I suppose that's a possibility, but I don't know if they post job listings for games that are that far out.
That's like 4 years out, dude. And these
a long way out.
And Call of Duty games are shake and bake. I mean, I seriously doubt these take like a lot of time to develop. I mean, it's the same engine with little enhancements. So I mean, this isn't something we're like, man, we got to get started 6 years in advance to make a Call of Duty game.
That's why I said that was probably the furthest option of the three.
That is really further option. Yeah, that one's way off. No, it's
interesting.
interesting.
In that scenario though, Brent, it's got to be one of the first two then, right? It's either this game is it's. I mean, in this scenario, the game is cross-generational, and either the next generation launches in fall of 2019 or it launches in spring of 2019. Those are really the two options, right? In this scenario.
I mean, that's the only way I can look at it.
2020, spring of 2020, not 2019.
Spring. I mean, that's that. According to this job listing, that's the only way this works out. That's the only way this thing shakes out. So, man.
It's hard for me to envision a PlayStation or an Xbox launching outside of the fall. I know Nintendo did it, but Nintendo does their thing. Like Sony and Microsoft, they're always right there in the fall launching their systems, and it would be a huge like turn for them to launch it in the springtime with with the holiday season later in the year. And maybe that's something they do now. Maybe they get their systems out there in the spring, they get through all the system shortages, and by the time they get to the fall and the holiday rush, those shelves are fully stocked and people are ready to go.
That's interesting. That's a good point. Because that's usually the case when the fall comes. Everyone's fighting for whatever consoles might be out there. You launch in the spring, you deal with the hardware shortages and it's difficult to get a hand on the system, but that allows them a good 6-7 months to clean things up, get things in order, and then when the big fall holiday season comes, those shelves are stocked aplenty. And dude, that's interesting. That's a good thought. I never thought about it like that. That's interesting.
And that's kind of what Nintendo did.
Yeah.
They came out in March. The system was on shortage for 4 to 6 months after the launch of the system. Once we got towards the holiday season, though, and we got those Mario bundles and Mario came out, that thing you were able to find one. You were able to go to the store and buy one pretty easily, and it worked out really good for them over the holiday season. They sold a ton of Nintendo Switches. It was, I think it was the highest selling platform over the holiday or whatever. I don't remember what the numbers worked out to be. Whatever the case may be, they sold very, very well. And a lot of it was because they got through that initial wave of shortage right off the bat, and they were ready for the holiday season. They were stocked, loaded, and ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting thought, man. That could be what the plan is. I mean, we'll find out. But I thought that was a really interesting article, and when you kind of dive into it, look at it from other angles, take that information and look at it and be like, hey, wait a second, this doesn't line up with what we all think when these next gen consoles are coming out. So it'll be interesting to see how this turns out, man. But that's next gen talk, dude. It's real, dude. Like we're starting to hear more about it. And
we talked about it, man. Once the train starts rolling on this, like these stories are going to keep coming out, and a little bit prior to E3 and since E3, we've just been hearing about it's like every week there's something that's coming out about next gen, and it's only a matter of time before Kotaku or Patrick Klepek, one of these guys, gets the scoop, gives us the details on the PS5 or the Xbox 2, and just lays it all out for us, and then we're just in full, just building up to the launch of the system mode. But just by this Call of Duty article, man, it has to be a 6-month window between the fall and the spring of when these new systems are coming out between 2019 and 2020. I don't see any other way this job posting makes sense.
Nope. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Now let's go from next gen coming back to current gen, because there was an article this week that came out with an interview from with Eurogamer and Todd Howard regarding Starfield and whether or not it could actually release on PlayStation 4 or Xbox One, even though they already said this is a next-gen title. In this interview, Todd Howard offered further comment about what platforms to expect the sci-fi adventure as the concept of next generation was expressed during the briefing. Here's what Todd had to say. Quote, "What systems we put it out on, what's the hardware requirements, is still to be determined. We're pushing it. We're thinking very, very far in the future, so we're building something that will handle next generation hardware. That's what we're building on right now. That's where our mind is. But that doesn't mean it wouldn't exist on the current systems as well." End quote. What the hell are you saying, Todd?
I mean, Todd says we're thinking very, very far into the future, so we're building something that will handle next generation hardware. Well, if that doesn't mean it wouldn't exist on current systems, what the hell does that mean, Todd Howard? That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I mean but that doesn't mean it wouldn't exist on the current systems as well. I mean, if it's this far into the future, I mean, we're talking deep into, maybe halfway through the next generation of consoles, or maybe at the first couple years in. Why would they waste their time putting it on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One? I mean, I understand there'll still be a decent install base, but it's not everyone's going to be transitioning over to the new hardware at that point. And that just seems strange. But I mean, hey, that's Bethesda, and as you know, boys, as we've seen, Bethesda can put their games on any platform at any time, and it does very, very well.
That's true. Even Alexa. So that it's funny that actually released on Alexa. They actually released Skyrim for Amazon Alexa.
Is that really on there?
Yeah, it was on the website. You could go on there and buy it. So that whole like funny skit with Key, like it all played out, and we all thought it was a joke. But later on that evening, it was there. It was there on Amazon.
Oh my god!
I'm gonna pull it up right now and see if it's still on there. But I bet you it was like an app you could get on there.
That's absurd if that's the case. That's nuts, dude.
Yeah, it's still on there. Skyrim Very Special Edition for the Alexa.
Wow.
It is like you said, man. They will put their game on any and everything, but it just wouldn't make sense if their whole goal with Starfield is to push the boundaries of what they can do and to make a bigger game, a more robust game, a game that screams next generation. It wouldn't make sense to go and do that and then just put it on the last generation of consoles as well. I get the install bases there, but isn't that antithetical to what you're trying to do with this game in the first place? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, when he sits there and says we're trying to build this with next gen hardware in mind, the high requirements, why?
Yeah.
Why are you wasting your time teasing about being on systems that are clearly going to be well below the requirements for your game?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be just graphics either. I mean, they can push the boundaries of mechanics, of what they can do with narrative, of what they can do in the environment. Like all that kind of stuff of gameplay. All that stuff comes into play as well. It doesn't just have to be graphics when you jump from one generation to the next, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're right. Yep. So it'll be I'm really curious about that Starfield game, man. That's one of the games that I'm really, really hyped to hear about. But Todd Howard just says certain things, and it gets people fired up. We'll come back to Todd Howard in a little bit. But, boys, we're going to hop into some Anthem. We've got some more information, a lot of information, actually, including a gameplay demo that I know Frankie would have loved to have had during the E3 press conference.
Man, I'd have loved to have had it, too.
Yeah, it's basically the full version of, because during the E3 press conference we just kind of got this quickly edited video where it kind of transitioned from moment to moment, and it was very, very short compared to the 20-minute video that we got this week that showed everything, including the boss battle that we were all like, oh, let's see it, and then it cut away. We actually get to see the boss battle in this video, but there was a lot of information that came out of this Anthem story, boys. So let's talk a little bit about what you saw in this story that you thought was interesting.
Yeah, first and foremost, man, just on that video that BioWare released of that mission, of an extended version of that mission. It also had developer commentary throughout the whole entire video. So it was 20 minutes of them going through the mission in an extended fashion, and also like letting us know what was going on throughout the mission, which I thought was far more effective than what they showed us at E3. So I would have preferred if they would have just cut out some of the Q&A session and just simply ran the gameplay feed and spent 20 minutes talking over the gameplay feed the way they did in the gameplay trailer that they released this week. I thought it would have been far more effective than what we ended up getting from EA Play, and it showed us a lot more about the game. It showed us some of the mechanics that go into like that boss fight at the end there. I tell you what, man, that boss fight was literally ripped out of the Destiny playbook. This game looks very, very similar to Destiny. It is very much Destiny with javelin suits. I mean, that boss battle with the boss coming down, you shoot its weak point, it goes away, it spawns a wave of enemies that comes out, you shoot the enemies, the boss comes back, you fight it again, and you go through that whole rigmarole. Like that's Destiny boss battles 101. And it's boss battles in a lot of games, but it's just funny how much that these games kind of play off one another. But outside of the video, so all week long, Mark Dara has been running an Ask Me Almost Anything About Anthem. So that's an AMA. Ask Me Almost Anything About Anthem. They've been running this all week. And Mark's been answering a ton of questions about this game. And Brent, we have a little bit of a clearer picture. In some cases, a lot more of a clear picture about how this game is going to function, how this game is going to run on a moment to moment basis. And I'm going to go through some of that stuff with you now that was revealed in the AMA. And I'll kind of go through each of these sections here, and then you can kind of chime in with what you see. There's a lot in here to process. I tried to grab out some of the stuff that was most interesting to discuss. But here's some of the things I picked up, and this is via IGN. They went and did a really nice job curating all of the questions that Mark answered and putting them into this massive article. So kudos to them for this. So first of all, in terms of the story, so Anthem's main story will absolutely include important non-player characters that you interact with during the story and beyond. So fear not, there will be NPCs in this game. You will interact with them. They will be part of the story. We've heard the talk about romances in this game. Romances could happen at some point after launch. The decision to not include romances in Anthem was a design choice rather than a technical limitation. They mentioned that this game was more about building the relationships with your comrades and the people that you're going through the game with. That was what they wanted to focus on outside of the romance aspect that they've done in the past. Story missions can be played with 1 to 4 people, meaning you can play Anthem alone if you really want to. Strongholds, which is something we're going to talk about several times here, Brent. I'm really interested in these. These are Anthem's dungeon-like content. Mm-hmm. They aren't going to be soloable, but you don't need to do Strongholds to complete the story. To clarify, Strongholds aren't just hard, but will require 4 players to enter them. Fortunately, you can use the matchmaking system to find players or invite players to join you. There will be some kind of scoring mode for friendly competition in Strongholds, and perhaps more. Your primary enemy in the story will be the Dominion, a human nation bent on subjugating the other people. I didn't realize at the time that they were talking about the Dominion. I didn't realize this was a humanoid race that was going to be like our main antagonist. But that's interesting. The Dominion believes that they can control the tools of the Shapers, which are the gods that left behind these tools, the Anthem of Creation, the big thing that Anthem's built around, and bend them to their own purposes. The Dominion are an ancient enemy with a secret in their past, and the Dominion will have their own javelins. That's interesting. They're basically like the anti-version of us. Mm-hmm. They're a humanoid race with their own javelins who have their own purposes and all of this. So I didn't realize that was how they were at the time. So that's very interesting. To elaborate on cutscenes while playing cooperatively, the other players in your squad won't appear awkwardly standing around in your cutscenes. However, all players will see the same cutscene for the same length of time every time a cutscene fires. There's no waiting for someone to be done with their cutscene. On missions, you'll focus on the action as opposed to conversational branching. Your actions may affect things in the world, but in your hub, the conversations and interactions you have will definitely affect their lives. You'll be able to replay missions once you finish them as well. So, Brent, what stands out to you in terms of the story stuff that we discussed there, if anything?
No, I like the fact that you can replay story missions. I like how what happens, what you do outside of the world will be recognized, in the hub that you're constantly going back to. Mm-hmm. I think that's really cool. That kind of fits into what BioWare does typically in all their games. Your actions will somehow change the course of the people around you. That all sounds really interesting. I like the fact that the people the humanoids that you're going up against are very similar to yourself. That's really interesting as well. But a lot of good stuff. I like what I hear here. I like the interaction with other NPCs. There'll be other characters that you can talk to that you don't play as, so you'll have some story tropes there. So that all sounds really good.
Yeah. I was for me, once again, just the fact that the Dominion is another race of humans, mm-hmm. I think is really interesting. Typically, when you think of one of these big like sci-fi games, like you're going up against some nasty alien race or some bio androids that are set to take over the universe, it's not often you go up against another group of humans,
right?
And I can't help but think of something like The Last of Us, Brent, and that's what made that game so special. It wasn't the fact that the zombies or the clickers were the enemies really in that game. They were simply a victim of the circumstances of that environment. The real enemies in that game were the other humans you came across,
right? The
other like filthy scum of the earth that were out there trying to survive just like you were. And it's a dichotomy that just made that game so compelling and so interesting to play through from a narrative perspective. So to see a little bit of that, obviously you probably won't be on that level, but to see the fact that there's a human on the other side of this that's going to be our main antagonist, very, very interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of mechanics and features, here's some of the things that stuck out for me. To clarify the if-when questions about PvP, there are currently no plans for PvP after launch, but BioWare may look into it at some point after launch. The lack of PvP at launch allows BioWare to go broader on gear and weapons with less worries about balance.
Mm-hmm.
So that's makes a lot of sense. That's interesting. Cross-platform play, not currently planned, which is a good thing. Clearly, Sony wouldn't buy into that. Anthem requires an online connection to play due to the support of dedicated servers. So, as anticipated, this is an online-only game. All supported by dedicated servers, which is awesome. Everything in Anthem runs on dedicated servers except for your single-player hub. So that's Fort Tarsus and your mobile-based Strider. There will be 4 players on a server in free play mode. There's a chance BioWare could raise the player limit in free play mode at some point in the future. So Brent, this is a very interesting development here that I did not expect. I want to get your thoughts on this real quick. 4 players on a server in free play mode, which is basically like the patrol areas or the mode where you go out and you meet other people in the world. What do you think about the fact that only 4 players are going to be in that mode at a time? Is that concerning to you at all?
Does that mean if you're with your squad of I'm assuming if like your fire team, your squad is 4 people, so it's just you guys in that area?
I assume so.
That's interesting. But at the same time, in Destiny, sometimes I'll interact with somebody if they interact with me, but very rarely do I jump into Destiny 2 just jumping up with randoms. I don't do any of that, so that's not really a concern. But hang on a sec. We have a comment here, and you won't believe who it is, dude. You're not gonna believe who it is. Over on Twitch, Angels and Demons.
Angels.
Oh, my
up,
goodness.
Dude?
Angels and Demons. Here's what Angels had said. Good evening, gents. I hope they just build Anthem around a super deadly, compelling villain that can motivate and strike fear in all single-player and multiplayer alike. One can only dream. Make that 2 of us. I can only dream that as well. And I want to talk about that for a second. You mentioned it earlier, boys, that there's no focus on PvP at this time, or it might not even be the case at all. I think that's actually a really good thing, not only because of not having to worry about the balance of weapons and armor and whatnot. That allows BioWare to focus on the story, focus on the characters, focus on the enemies, build up a rich narrative. I know they don't have to worry about PvP. That's not even a concern. It's all about the PvE and the story and the characters. And I think that gets us a little bit closer to what Angels and Demons wants. A compelling villain that can motivate and strike fear through us as we're playing through the campaign.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to a larger point with this as well, Brent. When it comes down to it, this is a BioWare game.
Yep.
So no matter what kind of game this is, they could have come out with a match 3 puzzle game. When you create a BioWare game, there are certain expectations from that group of fans in terms of how this narrative is going to play out. So regardless of where Destiny has faltered narratively, regardless of how this particular genre, even in its infancy in the last few years here, has struggled to deliver a compelling story from this standpoint, like the BioWare fans, they're not going into this thinking they're going to get a half-assed story or a story that has the same issues that Destiny has. They're coming into this expecting to get a BioWare story. So, like I said, irregardless of what this game is or what this genre is known for, people are expecting a BioWare caliber story from this game, and that weight is on their shoulders to deliver that in this type of game. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. They definitely have a compelling foundation here, I think, set for what they can do with Anthem. So now it's just, can they deliver, especially in this structure of game? But just to go back to free play mode for a minute. So when you drop into an area in Destiny, you expect there to be other players around.
Right.
You expect to drop in there no matter if we go in there with a fire team or not. We expect to see other people running around in there. So when a public event happens or we step into escalation protocol, other people come and join us. So if you're on a server in Anthem, there's only 4 players allowed on that server at a time. Like, what kind of emergent activities are going to be in that world? I
Right.
wonder. Is it just going to be some basic stuff that you can tackle by yourself? Are there going to be more challenging things you can do with a group? Like, how's all that going to play out with only 4 people allowed on the server at any given time? I thought that was an interesting choice, and they kind of slipped that in there.
Yeah, that makes
But
and that would kind of concern me a little, especially if there are like things like public events. You
yeah,
jump into this free place or the free space with 4 people, 4 randoms, and what if 2 people are part of a group and they're like, "Well, I'm only interested in doing this for my mission," and all of a sudden it's just
mhm,
you and one other person for the public events. I mean, that's assuming there's going to be public events. In a free space, I would expect some kind of like immediate instance that happens that you have to take care of in a short amount of time. But unless you're in there with the full squad of 4, that leaves some concerns about what happens if this awesome
mhm.
public event starts and these 3 people are in a group and they just run off and do their own thing, and here I am with this awesome public event that I'm not gonna be able to beat and get the rewards for.
Yeah, they've talked a lot about the shared world in Anthem, and I guess I just didn't expect it to be limited to only 4 people. To
Hmm.
me, it kind of limits, like, how interesting are these just free play of areas going to be? Is it simply going to be just you fly around and maybe you find stuff here and there and you find lore or something like that, and that's cool? But
Yeah,
is there really going to be a lot to do there with it limited to only 4 people in the world at a time?
and considering the fact that these levels are big enough for you to fly around, I mean,
Yeah,
I hope there's a lot of enemies and a lot of cool stuff to see, or else it could be pretty bare. If there's
yeah.
just 4 people on this big server and these levels where you can typically where you can fly around, which requires a lot of space,
Hmm.
yeah, that might be a concern. But again, we don't know. We
Yeah.
won't find out until the beta drops. There could be a lot of stuff going on. They could have plenty of content in there to keep you busy. But it is interesting that only 4 people will be in this space.
Yeah, and these spaces are huge. They showed the map. That's another thing they showed in this gameplay trailer
Hmm.
that they put out from the full version of the game. They briefly went to the map when they chose the mission. The map looked huge, looked enormous. So I can imagine that these spaces are large.
Hmm.
So moving on here with some of the other mechanics that were noted, there will be some sort of crafting in the game. Interesting. Emotes confirmed, of course.
Yay.
There will be a free play mode that allows you to explore the world in an undirected way that's focused on exploration and discovery, like we were talking about a minute ago.
Hmm.
In free play mode, you can swoop in and help other players near you with their activities without having to form a squad. So, once again, that sounds like a public event, right? You
Right.
swoop in, you fight an enemy with other people, and you move on with your day. But with 4 people allowed in a server at the time, with you able to bring a fire team of up to 4 people into that world, it seems a little strange that free play would be limited to 4 people.
Right.
Um, BioWare wants to make sure people can always play together and aren't fragmented depending on who has post-launch content expansions. New story content, new game spaces, and post-launch content like that will be available for everyone. So that's big, right, Brent? I mean,
Mhm.
they're saying they don't want to fragment the people in this game. So whereas a game like Destiny, it's like, oh, you can't do this activity if you don't own Curse of Osiris.
Right.
You can't do this activity if you don't own Warmind. What BioWare is saying with Anthem is, look, we want everybody to be able to do everything, and maybe the stuff that we offer in terms of paid content is separate from things like new game spaces, new story content in the future. What do
Hmm.
you think about that plan?
I love it. I love how a lot of these publishers are moving to that route, man. Don't fragment the community. Keep everyone together. It keeps everyone playing. It keeps the
Mhm.
community all on the same level. And that kind of stuff I love. I love hearing that this is the direction a lot of these publishers are going.
There will be something akin to notorious, bigger, badder, stronger monsters out in the world of Anthem.
Hmm.
So that's awesome. We saw the Titan in the gameplay video. He's floating around in the world there. A big monster that was too strong for the fire team to take on at that particular time, so they kind of blew past him. There will be rare weapons or equipment that will drop from specific encounters. So that's good to hear. There is a day-night cycle as well,
Hmm.
also of interest. In terms of customization, Brent, there will be both personalization, making the javelin look the way you want, and customization, making the javelin play the way you want.
Hmm.
So all personalization cosmetic options in Anthem can be earned and unlocked through gameplay. However, the Legion of Dawn edition, which is the $80 edition of Anthem, the cosmetics items found in that edition of the game will be unique to the people who purchase that edition.
Hmm.
Loot is spawned for everyone and is instanced. There is no kill stealing and no loot theft in Anthem. Gear drops are based on your pilot level. If grouped with players of higher levels, your loot drops will start at your level, not theirs.
Hmm.
There will be lots of progression for better gear and weapons in the Elder game, which is Anthem's endgame. This is the first time we've kind of heard
Elder game.
the mention of the Elder game. Anything stand out to you in the customization category there, Brent?
No, it just sounds like typical run-of-the-mill stuff for
Pretty
customization.
straightforward.
Yep.
In terms of the javelin suits, you'll start Anthem with the Ranger Javelin. You'll unlock the others through the story. You'll unlock the other javelins less than a quarter of the way through the game. So if there was any concern about not having access to these javelins, don't worry. By the time you're 25% of the way through the game, you will have access to all 4 javelins.
Okay.
So that is good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
You can unlock the other javelins in any order by doing different missions. So if there's one you really want, sounds like once you get past a certain number of missions, those will kind of open up to you, maybe in the same way that you could go out and unlock a subclass in Destiny.
Right.
You'd go through, finish that quest, and then unlock that particular subclass. You can only have one of each javelin type per profile, but you can reconfigure them in your hub at will. And this is an interesting one here, Brent. You'll be picking up health to regenerate your javelin's HP rather than a health regen system.
So like pools of health, and when you're doing what is it, lost sectors with renown, you got to get those kills to get those
attrition.
pools of health. Yeah.
The attrition modifier on. Yeah, you got to pick up those pools of health. Now, what was there was another game we were talking about picking up health in recently too. The shooter. Which one was
Call
that?
of Duty, because you got to do the
Call of Duty. Yeah.
Yeah, the health thing now.
Thing. Is this like a is this an industry move to get more back the health packs? Or is this just what do you think about this? Personally, I'm a fan of the health regen systems that we have now. I'm not sure I want to go back to picking up health pickups.
I mean, I guess I can see the appeal of both ways. I mean, health regen is it's an assist. You know, that's just something that you're automatically going to get, and it keeps you in the fight and it makes things a little easier. I do like health packs. You know, I was born on SOCOM too. We didn't get health regen. Okay, you had to sit there and you had to be smart. You had to be, tactical and all that jazz. Now, I don't know if Anthem's going to be a game that requires you to be tactical, but obviously you get health packs that you can pick up. However, if you kill some, enemies, or if you find them laying around or whatever. I like that because it adds another element of strategy to gameplay. It keeps things a little bit more intense when you can't just take a shot to the head and go hide behind a barrel for 2 seconds for the wound to wear off. I like a little bit of strategy and make it a little bit more difficult. It doesn't make it terribly difficult, but it raises the stakes a little bit.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on it, and I see that perspective. At the same time, anytime I get that modifier in Destiny where I have to pick up those health pools, I just get irritated. I'm just like, man, I do not want to walk over there and pick up the health. I just want my shield to work. I just want it to regenerate.
You know who I hear say that a lot are warlocks. That's weird.
Funny. Yeah,
it is
weird.
Funny. It is funny.
Moving on. Online co-op, Brent. A couple things to mention here. If you are at the same place in the story, you'll get full credit for joining a friend's instance and finish a mission. If you've already finished that mission, you'll get special reward for mentoring a player through it. So that's interesting. All content in Anthem will have a matchmaking component to find other players to play with, and you will be able to control how open the matchmaking system is, and BioWare wants to limit the ability of random players to grief you. So I think that's all pretty standard stuff there. In terms of technical questions, this is interesting. Anthem will not be locked at 30 frames per second on PC as anticipated. The actual theater demo at E3 was running at 60 frames. The frame rate on PC will not be locked, of course. However, Anthem may not be locked at 30 frames per second on consoles either, especially on the Xbox One X and PS4 Pro. What do you think of that development, man? I thought for sure this game was going to be locked at 30. I thought there was no question. But BioWare seems to think otherwise. Like, this might be an option.
Here's the thing, man. Unless it says locked at 60, I'm always concerned that we're getting that uncapped frame rate, which can be, be very, it's a variable depending on what's going on screen. Anything can happen. I don't like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a high frame rate. I love 60 frames. It makes every game look better in motion. every game I've ever seen at 60 frames looks better than when it looks at in 30. However, I can't stand it when a game has the fluctuating frame rate, where if you're in an open area looking up at the sky, you get 60 frames, but as soon as you look down and the whole world's in front of you and people are around, it starts to chug and drops down to 30. I hate that. I don't want to see any of that stuff, because once that happens in combat, my experience is ruined. Lock it at 30, lock it at 60. I don't want uncapped where everything's fluctuating in between. I can't stand it.
I agree with you 100%. I think there's actually a lot of games that function very well when they're locked at 30 frames, and there's a lot of games that benefit from 60 frames per second. But you pick one or the other. You either lock it at 30, you lock it at 60, you get to whatever resolution you got to get to make that a reality, and then you move on with your day. So hopefully that's the case with Anthem here. But this is a beautiful looking game. The particle effects are crazy. The world is enormous and very detailed. I would be very shocked if this game's anywhere near 60 frames on a console. BioWare is currently looking into cross-platform saves. Interesting. I'm not sure how that would work. BioWare is looking into the option to turn off the floating damage numbers. It will likely do that. Now, this has actually been one of the bigger complaints, I think, from the Anthem community that's forming around this game at large, is that the damage numbers are too big on the enemies right now. So when you shoot the enemies, the numbers they're pretty big. They take up a sizable portion of the screen as you're shooting these things. So, BioWare either needs to look into maybe shrinking them down, or, like they said, you're giving you the option to just eliminate them as well. But do you really want that in this kind of game? Like, you want to see those damage numbers, man. You want to see what you're doing to these enemies, especially when you do these like combo attacks and stuff. Like, you want to see what's going on.
Yeah, I do, but I don't want it to take up a quarter of the screen either.
Yeah,
I mean, they can bring it down the font a little bit.
Yeah, so I think that's ultimately what should be done, as opposed to just giving you the option to eliminate it altogether. I do think that's a big part of these games. I can't imagine playing Destiny and not seeing those numbers pop up on those enemies when I shoot them. That's like not the experience I want. So hopefully they'll look into the font there.
And now, I want to touch on one thing you mentioned. I'm sorry to cut you off. You mentioned cross-platform save. There's something similar to in Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn, where I had an account on the PlayStation 4 and I had it on PC as well, and it carried over both ways, because if you had the subscription, you could play on either platform, and your cross saves worked there. So this is, since this is kind of going to be like Destiny, where it's going to kind of have MMO elements, that I think that would actually be really sweet if your account, it's similar like what somebody's blocking on Fortnite. You have your account that's not gameplay, but your actual account information that is cross-platform. And now it works on PlayStation 4 with Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn and the PC version. I can go over there and play with my character both ways.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, if they could do something like that, I think that would be great. Especially, this could be like a Play Anywhere title when it hits Xbox as well. So to have a feature like that would be great. A few more nuggets here to mention, Brent. This is just some very interesting things that were mentioned through this AMA. So the people playing the EA Play demo of Anthem were experts who had been practicing that run for months. all that's to say that Strongholds, the content we saw in the demo, will be hard. Will be really hard. Strongholds will be a combination of both inside and outside locations. BioWare specifically didn't want to use the term dungeon because it implies a cave system or some sort of castle. And strongholds are really big spaces that include exteriors. Strongholds will be approximately 35 to 40-minute experiences. Ooh. So this is what I want to dive into here, Brent, because this AMA, AAA, however many A's are after this, was the first time I was hearing about strongholds as they are in Anthem. So like they mentioned, the closest analogy to these are dungeons in another type of game, but 40-minute instances in the game that you go through that are ultra hard, that require 4 people to go through. And the actual segment that we saw in the gameplay trailer, the one that we were talking about earlier, was a stronghold. Like when they dove down into that area to go confront that spider boss at the end, that was a stronghold. And they didn't show us the entirety of that section. And it's because of this here. It's a 35 to 40-minute section probably to go through there and get to the boss. So all told, that chopped up video we saw via E3, that was probably an hour-long segment or something like that when all was said and done. And maybe that was a shorter stronghold because it's one of the early ones in the game. So maybe that one's not quite 40 minutes and it's a little bit easier of an experience. But it sounds like for the most part, they're going to average 35 to 40 minutes and be tough experiences. What do you think about that, man? That sounds like a cool addition to this game, right? To have these strongholds, and it sounds like when you find them, they're gonna stick on the map there too, so you can go back to them if you so choose.
Sounds like what I want Lost Sectors to be.
Yeah.
No, awesome. Honestly, this sounds like their version of the Nightfall. I mean, it really does. You're going into this stronghold section that's very difficult. There's exteriors, there's interiors, and there's a huge boss waiting for you at the end. This is basically, it sounds like a Nightfall.
And hopefully they have some good loot to go along with it.
I sure hope so.
And in terms of the size of the game, like we were talking about earlier, Brent, there are 10 sub-regions in the game. During the demo, Mark Dara said we're seeing a pretty small part. I think we cross maybe one sub-region. The game is very comfortably large. However, that doesn't take into account the sheer magnitude of the verticality in each region. You have to think about the playable space, not as a plane, but as a volume, Warner said. It's not just about running across it. It's about exploring it in all axes. So that's something that I hadn't thought about with Anthem, and I probably should have, because you can fly. Mm-hmm. You can fly around these levels. You can go up pretty high. You can go down low into the water as well. So thinking of Anthem not as a linear level or a just straight line from point A to point B, but as a three-dimensional plane, and you're taking into account all aspects of the volume of that space. This is a pretty huge area to fly around in and play this game in, right?
Yeah, and it's really big to only have 4 people.
Yeah, exactly. So, it makes it even stranger that there's only 4 people allowed at a time. Loot that you miss in the world will be delivered to you in some sort of mail system back at Fort Tarsis. Yeah, where have we heard that before? With the exception of common gear, they won't bother with that as of now. So, hey, that sounds exactly like Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Something else that sounds exactly like Destiny. There are 6 tiers of loot, and they're as follows: common, uncommon, rare, epic, legendary, and masterwork. How about
that? Masterworked.
However, BioWare said the last 2 could swap places or are subject to change. You can perform combos when playing solo. So this is one of the really interesting things I thought that they showed in the video here, Brent, when they played this again, was they honed in on this combo system. Mm. I don't think they did this justice when they first unveiled the game, or especially in the demo at E3. But you can link up your attacks with your teammates to get enhanced damage on enemies. So whereas a guy might shoot a lightning bolt attack down and then you use your rail gun to shoot into it, and it does enhanced damage, or you shoot a firewall down on enemies and while they're burning and you shoot mortar shells at them and it does combo damage on them. Like, that stuff's cool. Coordinating your attacks and getting these combos is awesome. But it's good to know that you can actually do this solo as well. So for example, you can use the Ranger's freeze grenade and combo with its shock mace. You can also do it with a lightning strike and a railgun. On the question of why go to Fort Tarsis if you can use the Strider as a closer mobile base, Fort Tarsis has merchants, more things to explore, more of where the role-playing takes place, and it's also very high up in the world, so you get more elevation when taking on there as opposed to the Strider. So, Brent, that is everything that I think is of note of what we learned from Anthem in this AAA this past week. What do you think about all this, man? Do you feel like you have a clearer picture of what Anthem, the game, is now than we did prior to this week? Are you more excited for this game, less excited for this game now? What's your overall thoughts on what we heard here?
I'm definitely not less excited. I'm very interested in this game, and a lot of the stuff sounds really, really good. They're speaking my language. Okay, there's a lot of stuff here that sounds like it's very similar to Destiny. There's maybe variations of what they do in Destiny, and that's a good thing because I love Destiny, and this is a game that's speaking to me in a lot of ways. But like Destiny, it's going to come down to gameplay, and if flying around on jetpacks and engaging in combat with jetpacks on isn't as fun as just the shooting in Destiny and using your supers and all that jazz, it's going to be a real quick discussion. It'll be over quickly. And I want to come to you with a question that Moodini has in the chat. He says,
Moody, what's up, man?
This is what Moody said. No one's actually going to play this game with all the D2 hotness coming up, right?
Honestly, that is a very distinct possibility.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing, Mood, and I'll let Boyce answer in a second as well. Here's the thing, Mood. If Forsaken does not deliver, if Gambit sucks, and if Forsaken's terrible and there's not enough content there, then I think Anthem and The Division 2 both have excellent chances at dethroning Destiny and winning a lot of that community over to them. However, if for a fan of Destiny such as myself, and I'm sure I'm speaking for boys here as well, if Forsaken delivers and it's as good as people are hoping it is, and the Gambit is as fun as people are saying is, then Anthem has a tough road to go. It's going to be a steep climb to get me to pull me off that Destiny mountain.
Yeah, it's one of the things we talked about, Brent. We were talking about when we were covering E3. It's with Anthem and with Destiny 2 and with the Division 2. There's 3 games that are going to be competing in the same space for our time. And at this point, we're 4+ years invested into Destiny and Destiny 2, and Forsaken's going to be out. And from everything that we've seen and everything that we've heard and everything that we've played of this game and what we see coming down the pipeline, I just don't see how this game doesn't deliver. We've been playing it for the past year. We know exactly how it plays. We know what to expect from it. Mm-hmm. We know that what's going to happen when the changes that they're making enter the game, like how that's going to affect the game experience. So I would be very shocked if Forsaken doesn't deliver the kind of experience we're hoping that it does, and that's going to make it even tougher for Anthem and the Division to sink its claws into us, because not only is Forsaken going to be out, but we're going to be 1 or 2 content packs deep into the season 2 of content with Destiny 2 as well. Mm-hmm. by the time Anthem and the Division come out. So it's an uphill battle absolutely for Anthem or the Division 2 to vie for my personal gaming time in the MMO shooter space right now. So it's definitely going to be a lot of push and pull to get me to leave Destiny and play these games for a significant amount of time. But I'm definitely willing to give them a shot, give them their due. But I'd be very shocked if I left Destiny for any period of time to play these games.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you. Like Destiny, I understand the divide and all that jazz with the community. I get it. I've been on the side where I've enjoyed Destiny too, despite its imperfections, and I'm looking forward to spending a ridiculous amount of time. Not only with Forsaken, but we just got the moments of triumphs today. So now I know what I'm doing for the next couple of weeks. I got a lot to knock out, but it's just it's like, hey man, it's going to come down to gameplay. A lot of this stuff looks cool, it looks beautiful, and all that stuff, and it looks great. But how it plays is going to be clutch.
Yeah, Destiny. I mean, just a leader in the clubhouse when it comes to gameplay, man. So it's just they've basically perfected the sci-fi shooter controls and then the way that game feels in my opinion. So they're already like first in class when it comes to gameplay. So they've already set the bar really high when it comes to that, and these guys are gonna have to match up to that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Jacob has a quick question. I'll answer it for him. Hang on. Quick question, guys. How many points do y'all have in triumphs? I believe, Boyce, you're at 100, and I'm at 140.
Sounds about right.
That's where we're at. We got a little bit to do. I think the only ones I got to knock out are the raids. And what was the other one? I got to do. Man, I didn't do all the. I haven't gotten all the regional chests. That was disappointing.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't have all those. I have like half of those. But I've got like the escalation out of the way. I've got the escalation protocol out of the way. I've got the 45 things that are around Mars. I've got all that stuff. So the stuff I do have to get isn't too demanding, so I should be able to knock a lot of that out this week. And then obviously we're going to get more stuff on the 17th when the Solstice of Heroes or whatever it's called drops. We'll see some more what else is going to be objectives for us to knock out for the Moments of Triumph.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So, all right, moving along. We talked about crossplay, and we're going to talk about it again. Todd Howard is back, and he is talking about Fallout 76 and how it will not feature crossplay because Sony, damn it. In an interview with GameStar, Howard was asked why the upcoming online Fallout title won't feature cross-platform play, and it's because Sony is, quote, not as helpful as everyone would like. We would love to have it, but currently this isn't possible, end quote. So Howard basically comes out and says, again, like everybody else, we can't do crossplay because Sony doesn't want to play ball. Shocking absolutely nobody. However, Boyce, an interesting comment from Sean Layden on the matter.
Right.
Speaking with
This is
Euro.
what happens. This is what happens when you get Sean Layden in front of the mic as opposed to Jim Ryan. So,
Yeah, you actually get some kind of feedback that makes sense and kind of gets you thinking, hey, maybe. But anyway, speaking with Eurogamer at the Game Lab conference, Sony executive Sean Layden denied allegations that they weren't listening to the growing anger from the PlayStation community. Quote, "We're hearing it. We're looking at a lot of the possibilities," said Layden. "You can imagine that the circumstances around that affect a lot more than just one game. I'm confident we'll get to a solution which will be understood and accepted by our gaming community while at the same time supporting our business." End quote. Okay, so now the key there I thought was at the end where it says, a solution which will be understood and accepted by our gaming community while at the same time supporting our business. And I think this kind of ties in a little bit to what we heard from former Sony Online Entertainment head John Smedley, who recently said the Sony won't do crossplay because of money. Elaborating, Smedley wrote that Sony didn't like the idea of a customer buying something on an Xbox and it being used on a PlayStation. So, boys, I want you to give me your thoughts on Sean Layden's comment. Do you think he's addressing just the Fortnite issue with the accounts? Because that would affect the business because not everyone would be able to still like cross-buy and buy stuff on Xbox and use it on PlayStation. Or do you think they're coming up with a solution that will actually enable cross-play with Xbox and Nintendo?
yeah, I'm trying to figure out exactly what Smedley's talking about. He was talking about buying something on another platform and using it on a PlayStation. So, I guess he would be referring to a like an item in Fortnite or something. You would buy it on your Xbox, and then when you account over to your PlayStation, you then use that item on PlayStation. Is that?
I think
am I interpreting that
that's
correctly?
my understanding. Yeah, because Microsoft, if you buy like for example, a Founders Pack, you buy it on Microsoft Store, you get all that equipment and all that gear, and then you go on PlayStation, and you have all that gear. Microsoft gets the cut of that money.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I mean, there clearly there's some things that need to be worked out, and clearly this is a pretty new thing when all's said and done. This is something that hasn't really been a part of the video game business up to this point. So Sony has a different thought on this than the other hardware manufacturers clearly at this point. But it's like I said before, man. It's if enough people make enough noise about this and just keep talking this up, like eventually Sony's going to have to do something about it. So if fans keep talking about this, if developers keep talking about this, if this is something that the people want, eventually they're going to have to figure out a solution to this to make it happen. So reading Sean's comment and just reading between the lines, my initial thought was, okay, they're going to figure out a way where you can use your Fortnite account on other platforms. Like that was kind of my initial thought on it. But like I said, if people continue to make an issue with this, and if this is indeed a big want from the PlayStation community, then Sony's going to have to change more than just the Fortnite account at some point. At some point, they're going to have to come to the table and try to play ball with these developers that want cross play across a multitude of platforms. And you know what? This just goes back to kind of what we were talking about at the top of the show, Brent, at the top of the news segment with the streaming stuff. Yeah, at some point in the future, we're going to get to a point where we may not have a box from a hardware manufacturer that we're using to play games. We might be playing games on our phone, on our tablet, on our TV, whatever device we have in front of us. Maybe there's a universal box that we get that does all that stuff from everybody. And this is like one of the steps towards that future. So maybe this is a future that Sony's trying to avoid as much as possible. Like they like this kind of divided segment that we're in now, where they can make their games, they can sell their hardware, and people can get that stuff. Right. So maybe this is just trying to prolong the inevitable. But yeah, this is kind of like the first steps towards that universal future that a lot of basically everybody thinks is going to become a reality at some point. So, yeah, I still think that this is not a big deal for people. I still think this is the vocal minority that this is an issue for. Like, we still see PlayStation at the top of the MPD charts every single month. So I think as more people start to talk about this, and if this does indeed start to affect the bottom line for the system, then a change is going to have to be made. But right now, I still get the impression that this doesn't affect a large enough amount of people for this to really make a significant impact one way or another. Obviously obviously for the people that want this, that would be great. This doesn't affect myself personally too much. I don't have too much of a stake in this, but if this is what people want, hopefully Sony can give it to them at some point.
I think it's going to end up being more than just a vocal minority, though, simply because there's not. I would guess out of all the people that own consoles, I doubt most people have all three. So for people like us, for you, me, Frankie, Bender, we've got all three consoles. Cross-play doesn't really matter to us. If I want to play somebody that's, Destiny 2 with somebody on Xbox, I'll play it on the Xbox. If I want to play somebody on PlayStation, I go play it on PlayStation. So it's not a concern to me. I can understand, though, for the people who can't go out and buy all three platforms, there's a lot of folks like that. They have one platform, and yeah, they have a PlayStation 4, but then their one buddy gets an Xbox, and they're both playing Fortnite. Like, man, I wish I could play with my buddy. I think there's a lot more people like that than there are people that have all three consoles that truly don't have to. I really don't care about cross-play. It doesn't concern me at all. I don't have that issue. I don't have any kind of anything holding me back from playing with my friends. But I do think a lot of the people out there that can't grab all three consoles, whether they can't afford it, they just don't want to buy them. It is what it is, and I can understand why a lot of them would. Probably the more this story builds and the more people it reaches, I think you're going to see more of a vocal majority than you will see a vocal minority talking about it.
I mean, yeah, it's a possibility. I just for me, man, it's not even the fact that I have all three consoles right now. I think it's just the fact that I'm old. And
right.
At no point in history have I ever played a Nintendo game with somebody that owned a Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
I've never played a PlayStation game with somebody that was on an N64.
Mm-hmm.
I've never played a PS4 game with anybody that was on an Xbox One. At no point have I ever thought, man, I wish I could play this game with the people that are playing on Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
Like this to me is like a younger generation thing. Like this is something that they want. I don't care. I'm old. I'm used to just playing the games on the system with the people that own the system. So I don't really care one way or another where you own the game or not.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like maybe it's just because the majority of the people that I play games with are primarily on the PlayStation, so it's not an issue. And maybe it would be if it was more of a thing. But yeah, I'm an old school gamer, man. This has never been a thing for me, so I've never batted an eye at this.
Can you do me a favor? Can you just say "Get off my lawn"? I just
want
to
my lawn.
You old ass curmudgeon, you. No, I like I said, I can understand the appeal to a lot of people, but like you, it's just something that doesn't really, not even because I'm old, just I really just don't care about it. I mean, I can just jump into Destiny 2. If you guys are playing, I'll play with you. If you guys aren't playing and I'm on PlayStation 4, I'm just grinding out my stuff. If I go over to Xbox One and none of the Short Pause Guardians there are online, I'm just going to go solo and I'll play with Rams. I don't ever really think about cross-play. But I do understand, especially the folks that only own one console, I can understand why it's appealing to them.
And really, the other thing is this is really only an issue for a couple games, I feel like. The only people that care about this are the people that play Fortnite or the people that play Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, that's a lot of people. Mm-hmm. These are huge games that have millions and millions of people. But it's like a subset of that subset of people that care about this. So I still just don't think this is a big issue right now. But the people that this is an issue for, keep talking, keep getting your voice out there, keep getting your voice heard. Mm-hmm. The developers, clearly, they keep talking about this. So I think that might be the final thing that pushes Sony over the edge, maybe even before the community, is the amount of developers that are requesting this. Because if there's not enough people in the community that this is an issue for and it is just a minority of people that are playing the system, if all of the developers are united in this and this is what they want, then I think they're going to have to start playing ball on this a little bit sooner than maybe they want to.
I think it will become an issue, honestly, going forward outside of games like Fortnite and Minecraft, because as we're seeing, games as a service is a model that everyone's trying to implement. And games as a service are games that would make a lot of sense for cross-play. So I think the more we see the Anthems come out, the Fallout 76s, the Division 2s, all these games are going to be a lot more appealing if it's cross-play and you can play with your friends on other platforms. I do think once more of these games start coming out, these games as a service that are always online, I think those are going to be the ones that are going to start making a lot of noise that Sony's going to have a hard time ignoring.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Cool. All right, a couple more things we want to touch on. First up, the Shenmue remasters finally have a release date, boys. August 21st. Why not? Everything seems to be piling in to the end of August, and now Shenmue I and II, the remasters, will be available on Xbox One, PC, and PlayStation 4 for $29.99. The re-release will feature an updated user interface for both titles, as well as modern and classic controls, Japanese audio, and scalable screen resolutions. Boy, so you picking this up? Do you have any experience with Shenmue?
I do. I didn't play the games a ton on the Dreamcast, but I did play them on the Dreamcast. I know these were revolutionary at the time. These kind of set forth many of the principles that we see, I think, in the open world games of today, and they were a precursor to things like the Yakuza series. So I know that they took a lot from the Shenmue games moving forward. So I do want to pick these up. I don't know how well they're going to stand the test of time. I haven't played these in a very, very long time, but I am curious to get in here at $30 for 2 full games. I think that's a reasonable enough pill to swallow, especially if you get them on like Amazon or the Gamers Club. You get 20% off. I mean, you're looking at, $22-23 for a couple games. So that's not bad, I don't think.
Well, speaking of a pill to swallow, how about 100 gigabyte pill on PC?
This is interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, 100 gigabytes is a huge install for this game. It mentions The Witcher 3 clocked in at 45 gigabytes. So this is more than 2 times the size of The Witcher 3 file.
And just to clarify, I'm talking about Shenmue 3.
Yeah.
This is not 1 and 2 remastered, but
Yeah.
Shenmue 3. On the Shenmue 3's Kickstarter page, it lists the system requirements for the PC version of the game as needing 100 gigabytes of available space, dude. 100 gigabytes.
Yeah, that's crazy. I just like I was saying, The Witcher 3 is more than this. It's more than 2 times the size of The Witcher 3 install on PC.
You're basically
which is crazy.
Yeah, you're basically looking at Call of Duty after all the expansion packs, or Gears of War after all the expansions and add-ons. Or those are games that push 100 gigabytes. This thing's gonna be 100 gigabytes at launch.
Yeah, my bigger question with this though, Brent, is the fact that we see the PC specs for this game listed on the Kickstarter page. So we know the size of the file, we know what's required from the machine to run them. Does this mean that this game is close to release? I mean, you release this stuff when your game's pretty close to being done, right? I mean, you have the actual size of the file of the game. That means you pretty much know what's going to be in that file. In so much that you're confident to put, this is how big the size of our PC file is going to be. This is the rig that you need to run it. Is this game like closer to being done than maybe I thought this thing was still way far away.
Yeah, I don't know too many developers that put a placeholder requirements out there for a game that's ways off.
That would be weird.
Yeah, so no, I think this is a little bit of an indication that maybe we're a little bit closer than we think.
That was my first thought when I saw this. I was like, that's really weird that they would put this out here, and we're still, what I thought, really far away from a release date. I can't think of anybody now, I'm not a huge PC gamer, but I can't remember anybody like putting out PC specs like years before their game came out. You know,
no, this is I think this thing's getting close, dude.
So I'm curious if this is maybe an early 2019 title as opposed to a fall 2019 title, which I was anticipated it was going to be.
I mean, it would make sense with the the remasters coming out on August 21st. Yeah. Give people some time to blow through those, and then come on out in the spring or winter. It's not outside the realm of possibilities, dude.
Yeah.
All right. So now this next story, I think is hilarious the way that the article leads off on it when they talked about it. But after 14 years and 34 games, Telltale Games is apparently dropping its Telltale Tool engine in favor of the widely used Unity engine. Gone are the days where Martha Wayne's skull and eye bones are appearing on the ground without the rest of her face. No more freakish like glitches. Multiple sources have told Variety that Telltale Tool is on its way out. Its last outing will be The Walking Dead, the final season. Well, that's fitting. Walking Dead, the final season of the actual engine. Which is set to release its first episode on August 14th. After this, the first game to use the Unity engine will be Telltale's Stranger Things project. The decision to get rid of the aging engine has been a long time in the making. Variety sources claims that when the studio partnered with HBO to make its Game of Thrones adventure games back in 2014, there was a desire within the studio to stream the episodes over HBO Now, much like it's doing with Netflix in the future. However, the Telltale tool engine, which even back then had become dated, couldn't support the obvious synergy of streaming via HBO Now. So, boys, finally, dude, 14 years and 34 games later, Telltale's is ditching that engine, which has in some ways ruined an experience with an otherwise awesome narrative experience. I mean, there have been countless times where you get pulled out of these awesome tales because somebody's missing their skin and face, and all you see are their eyes and their teeth and their gums. They kind of look like the aliens in They Live. Like, they're just all muscle, and it's just like, what the hell? It took 14 years to change this thing?
Reminds me of that guy in Beetlejuice with the small head and just the eyes and the teeth.
Yes.
Obviously, this is a long time coming, dude. This has been a running joke in the video game industry for, like you said, basically 14 years now. Just the shoddy engine that Telltale's been using for their games. So, obviously, going to Unity is going to help them port their games end up on a variety of platforms. So I got to imagine being on Unity is going to make it much easier to bring this stuff out on all the different platforms that they like to release their games on. So I think that's probably a good move for them. Hopefully this gives them some stability with these titles, and we don't see the floating eyeballs and the gums and the and the scary looking people that take you out of the experience.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of cases, and Frankie's talked about this before, where his game will just crash and you'll lose progress, and you have to like go back and like stuff like that sucks, man. You're in the middle of a story-based game. You're moving along in the story. Your game crashes. You got to go back and replay the last hour that you just lost.
Yep.
Like, that's garbage, man. So this is long overdue, and hopefully this lets them do what they want to do. Because I mean, doing something like that would be awesome, dude. Like streaming your Game of Thrones game over HBO Now alongside the show. Like, that would be great for Telltale. So yeah, like switch your engine and do some of the stuff that you have ambitions to do.
Yeah. And I think it's just gonna benefit the games themselves, because Telltale's art style is beautiful in motion. I mean, when you get these games running at 60 frames and that art style is just popping off the screen, and then have it crash or have parts of people missing, it really takes away from the experience. I mean, the narratives are always going to be there in Telltale games, but it's always been the technical issues that have always just kind of pulled you out of the experience, which is something you can't have in these types of games. You have to be fully immersed, fully invested, and hooked on it. And when you have crap like the Martha Wayne's, just God, I mean, that almost looks like it's out of an R-rated game, dude. I mean, that looks horrific.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
Ugh, Garbo. All right, and the last thing we want to talk about, I know Frankie will be excited about this, and I know you'll be impressed because I know this is a game you really want to play, and I really want to see you play it. Hollow Knight has sold 1 million copies on PC. And 250,000 in the first 2 weeks on Switch, dude. This is a bona fide hit.
Yeah, very, very big hit. It's been very well received, both critically and commercially. There's a lot of people in the industry at large talking about this game right now, especially since it hit the Switch. It's been getting into more people's hands now, even though it's been played by 1 million people on PC. But it's just kind of it's hit more of the mainstream with the Switch now. So there's a lot more people talking about it, I think, now. So that it's been good for that game to get out on that platform and get some more eyes in front of it. But yeah. Obviously, just nothing but great things heard about this game. Art style's awesome. The gameplay is awesome. Sounds like a great Metroidvania game. I'm looking forward to playing this at some point.
Yeah, when it hops on PS4, I'm pretty sure we can make an exception to get that on the Indie Spotlight, because it's a game that definitely deserves to be featured there. And I think dude, this is a Ben Boyce joint through and through, and I really can't wait for you to see it, because it's got such an amazing atmosphere in the presentation, and then the gameplay is extremely good. So I think this is something that I'll be really looking forward to seeing you play through.
Yeah, I almost pulled the trigger on the Steam sale. It was on sale during the Steam summer sale recently.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I was like, all right, let me hold off. I'm not gonna play it right now. So, but yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this one at some point in the future.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's gonna do it for this week's show. Not too bad when you got two old pros going holding down the fort while Frankie and Ben attend to some things. But Mr. Boyce, where can we find you gaming and tweeting?
As always, Brent, I will be not tweeting at Piccolo930. It's where you can find me on the PSN as well as Xbox and Switch, Piccolo930. You will be handling the Tuesday Night Indie Spotlight, Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on the YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you know when we go live. But sometime around 10 p.m. Eastern, I'll be tuning in to watch you play the Spectrum Retreat.
Retreat.
Looking forward to it, man.
Awesome. You can find me on Twitter at TheDude1979, Xbox Live, TheRealDude79, and PlayStation Network, and the Nintendo Switch, TheDude79. Make sure you follow us on all of our streaming services. We're on Twitch, Facebook, Mixer, and YouTube. All of those Short Pause Gaming, whether it's a live stream, the Tuesday Night Indie Spotlight. We have live reactions to movie trailers we've been doing a little bit here and there. We're always working on trying to get developers on for interviews. So make sure you follow us on whatever streaming service you prefer. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you hit that little bell so that you're always aware when we're live or when we have new content up there. And then also you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Google Play, and Stitcher. If you like this podcast, if you really enjoy it, go over to iTunes, give us a 5-star rating, knock out a nice review. Now, if you're not ready to give us a 5-star rating or if you're not quite comfortable giving us a high score at all for this show, that's totally cool. We want to hear from you. Podcast@shortpause.com. That's where you can send all your criticisms, all your feedback, any suggestions. We want to hear from you. If there's a certain game you want us to feature on the Tuesday Night Indie Spotlight, or for a game you want us to stream that you feel is not getting the recognition that it deserves, we want to hear from you. It's the only way we can make sure this show is better, gets better and better, and it's a show that you never want to miss every single week. We will be doing a podcast next week. However, it will be on Friday night. It'll be a Friday night podcast. There will not be one Saturday night, so we'll make sure that we send out a tweet on Twitter that'll let you know when we're going live. But next Friday, 10:30-ish, like it says right there. Might be 10:30, might be 11, who knows. But just make sure you hit that bell because when we go live, you'll know. For Mr. Boyce, I'm Brent Felsing. Thanks again for watching. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys. See you.